A sprout of crimson plant stood still in a transparent culturing tube. Its leaves were ovate and in dark red, veins densely crept over its thick leaves. The stem was supple as it twirled over the tube with its sharp lilac-red body. At the top there laid a few berries with the shape like lanterns and red-yellow stripes. The fruits were seemingly well-grown as it looked succulent and fleshy, rather mouth-watering if one may ask Shio. Okay, this is one of the common spices one would see, the maroon bay. Shio became relatively calmer than before after getting used to interacting with Yi Chong slowly. If you would take a look at this, these lanterns have one particular thing we need inside them. Shio carefully plucked one of the so-called lanterns from the maroon bay using something like a pair of forceps, but they looked more refined. We are going to extract it. She laid it on a clean petri dish and poked a hole on it. Bright reddish liquid oozed out of the pore and filled the petri dish. Out of a sudden, a fairly dense scent wafted throughout the classroom. Since it is extracted from the maroon bay, we call it the maroon extract. She put the tool down and carried on elaborating. Such extract is mainly used in production of premium aromatic flavoring. Like a perfume for example. Since one could not culture it in mass productions, its price is naturally much higher. Haha, a lot of girls in our faculty would use it sometimes, though I prefer the scent of fading azure. Too bad Xulin never appreciated these lovely smells. Shio giggled as she spoke. One could tell that she was somewhat confident in this. The usual shrinking violet would bloom any time when any question was asked regarding her profession. She would become serious and her timid nature would disappear. And more surprisingly, throughout the class, only Shio was able to complete the extraction. Yes, none of the other gossiping girls around her completed the task of the day. Yi Chong had his eyes fixed on this very sprout in the tube throughout the rapid growth process. Within the past few hours, the seed was directly raised to its mature state while the former growth duration of this sprout would have taken 15 years in its habitat. The ground-shattering fact shocked Yi Chong. The first time it was he felt the depth, the amazing perks of being a chemist. And this was an utterly living organism. So Yi, why were you interested in the alchemy in the first place? We don't usually see boys here, you know. Shio looked at Yi Chong with her eyes opened wide in innocent curiosity. Just interested, he reasoned it as he just so happened to be very interested. But aren't you a technician? The expertise in the alchemy does not seem to be helpful to you anyhow. The main fields involved in this are botany and microbiology, which I think they aren't useful for your work, somehow. Botany and microbiology? Asked Yi Chong. Yes, our botany primarily consists of studies on spices, ingredients, herbs, and a little bit of others on botanical aspect. Mostly the studies focus on how to encourage the growth of the plants to reduce the time taken of the growing process and also on how to enhance certain effects of the plant's extract. We often carry out researches with such aim on plants that are either scarce by nature or take too long to grow while having high demands in a larger market. So yeah, botanical chemists are very common nowadays. I'm one of them too. Shio pointed at her tiny nose as she spoke in a swing. But microbiological applications are also frequently used in the faculty too. Many of them use microorganism to produce a particular kind of enzyme or polypeptides. That sounds cool too. Shio expressed admiration on her face. So, Yi Chong was intrigued. Is there any kind that does ores? Ores. Shio shook her head and she affirmed, duh, of course not. Ores do not show any attribute of a living thing. How do we even culture it when it does not even reproduce by itself? Well, some do animals. But it has been strictly forbidden by the 5 major galaxies in black and white, though there are still some people who do it in the dark. How could the people be so evil and heartless? Ze's face inflated in agitation. As expected, what was kept in Mu's databank was not anything ordinary. Nevertheless, Yi Chong had always trusted the statements inside the record. He never doubted its validity. Shio mentioned about culturing animals, which piqued his interest. Animals. Why do they ban chemists from doing animals? Ze's face looked extremely disgusted. Well, if you do it on animals, a lot of weird stuffs would come out. These are no longer animals, they are monsters. And these monsters are much more dangerous than whole lab of mutated plants. They are brutal by nature. It was not only that but also such act questions the ethnicity of our profession. It is cruel. Too cruel. So any government on any galaxy bans this inhumane act. Yi Chong seemed to get it at first, but somehow he lost it later. But then, what has that to do with me? Yi Chong discarded the complicating thoughts. He looked upon the bay inside the rube as he complimented the amazing capability of this expertise in mind. Gradually he grew fond of the alchemy. He reflected on what Shio had demonstrated, the reagent she had used and the way she executed the tasks, comparing them to what he had drilled into his head back then as he learned about the mechs. The alchemy wasn't that bad. thought Yi Chong. Ugh. Out of the blue, a piercing pain struck on his heart. Whimpered, he covered his left chest with his right hand as he curved his back subconsciously. Ah. It hurts. Yi Chong could feel his heart bursting like a balloon on this needle-piercing pain. His face turned dead pale immediately as sweat streamed over his shivering forehead. The stabbing pain surged through his body before he could do anything. It felt like every bit of his inner flesh was shredded and ground. A distorting ache bounced inside his organs one after another. His eyes went dazed as dizzy he had became. Zit. His muscles felt like they were being torn apart into a million pieces. Yi Chong tried to hold the incoming aches, but he failed miserably. He moaned slightly as he lost control. His heart, his chests, arms and legs, it felt like he was no longer in command of them. The torture seized into his veins as it engulfed Yi Chong's sanity like an army of ants. The minuscule pricking on every part flooded his body. Wham! Yi Chong could stand straight no more. He fell onto the ground, bowing like a grilled shrimp. His face was utterly drained by then, the muscles distorted helplessly. What a fearsome sight. Ah! Xiao dropped the flask in her hand. She covered her mouth as shrieks escaped in the sharpest hiss through the gaps of her fingers. The classroom was distressed. Yi. What happened to you? Speak to me. Please, no, teacher. Teacher. Such a heart-skewing pain. Ironically, Yi Chong had to stay awake to experience every bit of it. He was more conscious than ever for some reason. He could clearly feel the thumps falling onto his body. His nerves had never felt so discerning before. It might be extraordinarily useful anytime, but not now. It had become a torment to Yi Chong, obviously. There was no expression on his face anymore. Even the muscles on his face were no longer of his control. Technically, there was not a piece of muscle in his control. It felt like he had fainted, but he had not. In fact, his mind was clearer than ever. Yi, what has happened? Miu's calm voice sounded a little fret. He tried to reply, yet his brain waves felt blocked out completely. He could hear Miu and he could call out to him, again and again. However, Miu never heard him, not even once. Yi. It is not mature for you to do this. Yi. Miu's voice grew panicked as he did not receive any form of response from Yi Chong. There was no brainwave from him too, as if he was dead. 3 minutes. For 3 minutes. A never-before-felt pain tossed him into the underworld, sinking him into a barren agony. Boundlessly, endlessly, lawlessly it inched towards Yi Chong. There was fright in him despite being a strong man he always was. The taste of death, it was so close, the very first time to him. He endured the pain. By then the continuous headaches he suffered days back after overloading his head was nothing compared to this tsunami of torment. The headache was because of mentality, while this was a pure body sear. Moreover, this sudden pain was much more absurd compared to the headache he had. Nevertheless, thanks to the experience before, Yi Chong did not break down that quickly. He tried shifting his focus as he converged his thoughts at the strides on the floor. The tempestuous ache caused his mind to diverge a little. Unfortunately, that did not help Yi Chong out as the pain continued without weakening. He mustered the remaining bit of his consciousness, little by little, all concentrated. He could not mess this up. He could not believe the fact that he would lose his mind someday. Strangely as how without forewarning the pain came, right when Yi Chong was going mad, it vanished. Yes, it vanished without forewarning too. He regained control of his body. It felt like his body was the mech while his mind was the pilot. During that few minutes of chaos, the pilot lost control of his mech, then right before the crash, he retrieved the access to the control panel out of sudden. So it was a dream. He climbed up from the ground as his mind twiddled on everything. His body might have recovered, yet his head was still messed up. As Miu sensed reconnection to Yi Chong's brain, he asked in panic, what had just happened Yi? His mind had yet settled down. His eyes weaved through the frightened girls around him. He shook his head violently, attempting to snap out of confusion. It took about half a minute for Yi Chong to recover fully from the havoc just now. The girls looked exceedingly afraid, including Xiao, who backed off with the girls upon seeing Yi Chong waking up. Yi Chong certainly had no idea how terrifying he appeared at that moment. His paper-white face was the kind from the classic horror movies, the haunting ghost role of course, while droplets of sweat smudged his features along with some occasional twitches on his face. Creepy, no, disturbing. We will talk about this later, Miu. Muttered in his thought, Yi Chong responded to Miu. He inhaled deeply, waved his limbs slightly, only to make sure he had truly restored control over his body. All he thought by then was to leave straight away. The crowd had worsened his fear, the people would do him no good. The man who crawled out of the Hell's Gate would like some moments, alone. He had to conduct a discussion with Mew regarding the hows and whys of this. He got up and was ready to move. Who? Two oddly dressed men at their middle age stormed in with cases in their hands. Who was unwell? The pale green suit was absolutely a weird choice of uniform. And everyone backed out for a way. The two men approached Yi Chong. That's Mr. Yi. Yi Chong's face that had gone colorless, that overwhelming amount of sweat over his body, a fool could tell something must have happened to him. One of the men recognized him as he shouted and went upon Yi Chong waddling. Are you sick? We received an emergency call from here and we thought some students were unwell out of the blue. Never knew it was you, the teacher, who got sick. Come, we will do a checkup for you. Yeah, it's a little crowded here, we will get you shifted to the other classroom. It's right when Yi Chong, who strived for a moment of isolation, was going to reject the offer, Mew whispered, it would be recommended to have a checkup, Yi. 5 minutes later, he was at the other classroom. Mr. Yi, we are pitifully sorry that we can't find anything wrong on your body. The doctor who performed the diagnosis was stern as he spoke. Perhaps our facilities are too limited. We suggest you to transfer to the Advanced Medical Center at the Academy instead, just for a safer and detailed checkup. Alright, there's nothing else we could do here, if you would excuse us. He kept his tools and turned away. Also, Mr. Yi, please do make sure you have your checkup at the Advanced Medical Center. Very well, goodbye, have a nice day. Thank you, we hope to see you in good shape soon. Yi Chong exited from the medical center he was told to go to. The doctor's words echoed, Mr. Yi, your body is in the pink of health, well, pinker than most of the people I had seen. So no problem. What you have mentioned about today was probably a form of illusion, I supposed, due to excessive fatigue or tension in your mind. It is a conventional symptom for workaholics. So don't work too hard. Mr. Yi, I know you might be demanding of yourself and you have a good body, but you are still a human, you need to rest. I would advise you to rest adequately. In that chain of explanation from the doctor, Yi Chong only discerned that one striking word, illusion. Illusion. Impossible. That horrible sensation remained imprinted in Yi Chong's mind. It was endless, a no return, a no escape kind of pain, scary. Yi Chong shuddered. He absolutely wanted to know what exactly had happened. It stayed like a hanging sword upon his head, a threat coming anytime soon to Yi Chong, making him restless and spineless. Could it be some strange diseases people had been talking about? Those incurable kinds, but I had never gotten it before. The doctor said the same too, there was nothing. While Mew said the Blue Ocean Academy's own medical center was as advanced as it was called, then there should be nothing wrong. The doctor should be right. That awful experience, there would be no way Yi Chong would want the second time. If there would be another anyway, he doubted he could survive that. Do you have any deduction for this, Mew? Yi Chong asked impatiently, almost in a begging tone. He did not care if it was a baseless inference, he just wanted an answer. He could feel the insanity growing in himself, along with the agitation, the edginess. The former calm and still self of his had long gone by then. Yi, calm down. Mew spoke flatly as he sensed something wrong with Yi Chong. Take a deep breath. Like your combat routine. The negative emotion would only be hindering you. They are unhelpful and will only lead you to even more terror. Yi, breathe in, then breathe out. Breathe your soul. In almost at a split second, a rampaging feeling scorched his nerves. The heat flowed in his body like burning lava. It was so hot that Yi Chong could feel his eyes glowing raging red, while the skin of his hands were colored in a spooky vermilion, like a flaming piece of metal. It was annoying. Infuriating. Maddening. His body was hot, piping hot. A thought jammed his thinking and overrode everything else, destruction. Unleash the inside. Breathe your soul. If it was not Mew who said this line, he might have given an ultimate corkscrew punch right onto the person's face, no matter who the person was. He huffed and puffed. The fierce breath of his was boiling the nasal cavity. It was not the air he was breathing, it was more like the inferno, blazing inferno. He tried to inhibit the brewing heat storm in him. His instinct sensed the danger behind this berserk as soon as it emerged. An emotionless, nonchalant person he had been was alarmed by this uprising in his body. Breathe in. Breathe out. Deep breath. Gasp. Yi Chong was facing utter difficulty to carry out this daily practice, which was a piece of cake for him before. Just breathe in, yes, breathe out, in out, take the rhythm, ride on it, yes, you are a good boy. Mew's voice was hypnotizing as Yi Chong followed his order obediently. As his breathing grew calmer, his head cooled down. The heat disintegrated gradually and Mew got his old Yi Chong back. Such a breach at his security had exhausted quite a portion of his stamina. Rivers of sweat connected to each other on his forehead while wetting his entire clothes. Ichoo. Yi Chong sneezed abruptly as a wind blew by. I think, haha, Yi Chong laughed bitterly. Mew, I'm in trouble again, am I not? Yes, Mew replied approvingly. Yi, you do not seem right with that look. However, there has yet to be a proper solution from me. What exactly had happened? Yi Chong was vexed with himself. And that vex fell into a ripple in his mind, causing another storm again as his blood boiled. Breathe. Yi Chong out of his horror took a few rounds of deep breathing again and finally stabilized the rumble before the storm. Yi, stay calm. Mew explained, as what the data showed, assuming if this neither was an inborn disease due to family inheritance nor was due to a kind of virus infection back at Trash Planet 12, I have a deduction now? What deduction? Yi Chong asked. The silver liquid you dipped in back at the Black Cove. Added Yi Chong, possibility, 67%. Only that would be the suspect to this. Yi Chong figured it out the moment Mew mentioned about the Black Cove, no wonder they don't seem to really care about the security. They actually have this to capture runaways in their hands. And that is why, Yi Chong eventually made sense of what he had encountered, that is why, Johansson did not appear to be in desire of killing me. That was not a murder, but an escort. And he just had the way to make sure he could escort me back to the Black Cove. Wow. Mew's exclaimed voice was flat. It seems like you really have become smarter. If this is true, then that thing, Yi Chong flinched. That thing would not only happen once. As soon as the conclusion flashed in his mind, his brain jammed. Imagine the number of times he had to suffer all those. Yi Chong's face was grim. Poor Yi, and all Mew could do was to show sympathy. Apparently there were not many options for him. If he were to return to Black Cove to become a pawn by some mastermind, he would rather die. That tenacity and fighting will he got from living on Trash Planet 12 would be what he needed. He still had hope. And he had Mew and Shang. Yi Chong spent the next few days in worry, anticipating that horrendous storm to come striking him again from time to time. Yet strangely, it did not happen. That surprised Yi Chong. Well, thinking again, Yi Chong assumed his anticipation would not be helpful at all. Generally he would have lost full access control of his body by then. He could not even speak to Mew through telepathy. If that would be the case, Yi Chong decided to live on without fear. For safety, he planned to reduce the time outside and he did not intend to go back to Grandpa Qian anymore. He could not predict when this dreadful symptom would occur again, but he could predict that surely if it happened and anything else dreadful happened along, he could just be the dead meat on the chopping board with no place to run. So Yi Chong spent the whole day rooting himself at his workshop while Mew booted his mech self to hide within the countless mechs Yi Chong had in his place, striving to protect Yi Chong at any casualty. He thought he would be in peace at least. Unfortunately, his fame did not decrease. Yi Chong. Ruisu came slamming the door open. You. Go to my place. Now. My sister wants to see you. She came in with a brief command and introduction. Her expression was unhappy. Your sister. Frowned Yi Chong as he asked. The lady you fought that day. Who came with me? Her eyes slightly reddened as she reminisced the incident. Oh. Ruisu was finally speaking his language, the lady he fought that day. He remembered everything. Normally Yi Chong would jump from his seat, nodding his head as he marched to the place, if it was an invitation from a challenger, especially if the challenger had some fancy tricks that could hold him back. However, he refused. Without hesitation and further inquiry, no, he gave a direct decline in Ruisu's face. Ruisu was so irritated that her face turned pale as she bit her teeth. What a weird girl. Yi Chong could not understand the girl before him, he decided to deal with ignorance. Ruisu wanted to be nice at first, nevertheless Yi Chong seemed to be uninterested in the kind self of hers. That was when she transformed back into the notorious witch Su. Yi Chong. Are you a man? Let me ask you, are you still a man? I can't believe my years of hearing such puny words from a puny person like you. I had never seen such a useless piece of dirt in my entire life. You don't even have the balls to go to my place. You coward. You spineless squid. Yi Chong spectated the amazing talk show from Ruisu nonchalantly. His ears had grown numb towards personal attacks and offensive languages. So Mew, shouldn't humans be afraid of death? Yi Chong asked in his mind. They should, said Mew. Then isn't it normal for one to be a coward in this? He asked on. Well, in the society, fearing death is considered as a cowardly act, even if they all fear the death like no one ever did. Explained Mew. Boring. Exclaimed Yi Chong. Right, Mew agreed too. Are you listening to me? My sister is calling you, no, ordering you to move that broken bottom of yours to my place. You heard it. Move. Why aren't you moving? Oh my fall galaxy, if there's a quantum singularity I swear I'll catapult you into it. The bickering went on for a moment. And Ruisu realized it was pointless to scold her signature lines at Yi Chang. She became parched and tired. Nothing had happened other than most of her inner blaze had extinguished. Please, going the hard way did not work it seemed, so Ruisu decided to plead instead. I beg you. Please, Yi Chang, please. It's just a trip to my house. My sister wants to see you, just come. Could you kindly do my poor sister a favor? Her watery eyes overflowed with pity. Anyone else would have accepted her plea right away seeing those eyes. Well, it was anyone else after all. Not Yi Chang. Yi Chang did not have concept on how this begging worked. The heck she's doing, Mew? Yi Chang inquired bewilderedly. Technically, she was trying to initiate your urge to protect her by acting as a weakling in the situation. Concisely he replied, most of the women use such method to gain a man's sympathy, added Mew. She's acting weak, hoping that the enemy would come and pity her. Yi Chang was not convinced, the logic did not work in his head it seemed. Oh, well, Mew halted for a noticeable length, the relationship between men and women are not malignant to begin with. Well then, what is it? Yi Chang asked. Regarding that, I suggest you to have your session with Shang, he is more of an expert in this, and Mew quickly shut his mouth. Ruisu tried to rephrase her plight and redid her acting repetitively. Still, it did not work on the man with a heart of iron. Ruisu never expected Yi Chang to be this hard to penetrate. She could not believe that her ways neither hard nor soft worked. The feeling did not even seep into his skin. She became desperate as her signature tricks with a 100% success rate on other men did not work on him. She recalled what her sister told her back at their home and tears wetted her beautiful face. It shocked Yi Chang a little. Yeah, only a little. Sniff, sniff, Ruisu held her tears and looked at Yi Chang wholeheartedly. In what way you would agree to see my sister? Yi Chang thought for a moment, get her here if she wanted to see me that badly. With Mew lurking in the queue of mechs, he believed he would be in good hands even if that disastrous syndrome happened again. Okay. Fine. Ruisu rushed out of the workshop in tears. You better remember this. Yi Chang. The students on the way were impressed by Yi Chang. They almost wanted to drop by the workshop to give a salutation as he managed to make the witch of the campus to cry twice in a row. Spectacular. What Yi Chang did not expect was, Rui Bing actually came. And she was alone. Rui Bing sat before Yi Chang, her face pale, drained of blood. It seemed that she was not yet recovered from the injuries from before. Her long, black hair further emphasized her pallor, and her occasionally knitted brows made for a pitiful appearance. Her former magnificence was now turned into fragility. Her thin physique under the loose training garb made her look as weak as a withering leaf. Yi Chang was also shocked to see Rui Bing as she was. Rui Bing noticed that Yi Chang was unharmed, and said wryly, you are truly physically strong. Yi Chang sat quietly. While he did not understand the reason for her visit, Yi Chang still threaded with care, with Mew standing quietly behind him. If anything happened, Mew would be able to react at the drop of a hat. Besides, he was not entirely defenseless himself, only that his weird condition might be triggered again. Yi Chang sat quietly, his eyes staring at the other party, unblinking. He was waiting for her to state the purpose of her visit, for he believed that she would not have visited for no good reason. Yi Chang believed that this woman sitting before him, the strongest woman he had ever met, would not be up to a silly action like that. As for Rui Bing, Yi Chang still had full admiration for her. Her skills in martial arts were levels above his, and that move was most likely an attack filled with spirit, in Mew's words. That had made Yi Chang appreciate her even more. It was the first time Yi Chang had seen an attack that was beyond the logic of pure physics. Rui Bing did not say anything, sitting quietly before Yi Chang, her dark eyes staring straight at him. Their eyes met each other's in the space between them. A faint blush began to spread quietly up Rui Bing's nape. Her silence was baffling to Yi Chang, as he had thought her as someone straightforward in nature. Since she had visited, there must be something on her mind, so why would she not speak of it? Yi Chang broke the silence and spoke, why are you here? His flat tone together with his apathetic expression made Rui Bing turn serious. While her body was not fully healed, her former fighting instinct as a martial arts practitioner was awakened. Rui Bing sat upright, her expression stern, but her first words thoroughly confused Yi Chang. Will you marry me? Marry her. What? Thankfully, Mew was near him, and Yi Chang communicated with Mew through his brain waves. Mew, what does it mean to marry her? Based on available information, it probably means becoming legal husband and wife. Mew explained. What's legal husband and wife? Yi Chang was baffled. This area is not my specialty, you should ask Shang about it. We need 5 seconds to interchange. Mew was obviously troubled with the question as well, and decided to let Shang, with a more advanced mood matrix, to deal with the matter. As soon as Shang was out, he held electronically. Wah, Yi as expected, it's the aggressive beauty from last time. TSK, a beauty like this who fits all your requirements is truly rare. Yi Chong did not quite get it. What does that have to do with being a beauty? Shang bluntly spoke, of course, who wouldn't love a beautiful woman? He deliberately paused before continuing, of course, your taste is too peculiar. However, does she not suit your standards? The body cannot be too muscular, that would affect speed, and she cannot be too thin for the muscles must be powerful enough. Endurance is a must and flexibility must be excellent. Excellence in martial arts, almost as good in mechs as I am. A decisive person, one-hit KO are preferable. High vigilance. Best if she can be proficient in mech mechanics. Besides the mech side of things, it seems that she was almost made based on your criteria. Besides, it's quite fast to build up knowledge in mechs. Yi, I can't think of anyone who can better fit your requirements than her. Yi Chong was still uncertain. What does this have to do with marrying her? Shang nearly fainted at that. Yi, could it be that you're still not in your puberty? Heavens. You're 20. This is too bizarre in the face of biological theories. Could it be, Shang's voice was getting queer? His hesitance in speech also made Yi Chong even more confused. Biology. Theories in biology. Isn't this an alchemist program? Shang nearly cried. Cough, theories in biology. Yi, you can't go on like this, I must now begin to show you the right path of humanity. I can't let Mew mislead you anymore, heavens, I can already imagine the darkness and dullness of your future life. After a pause, Shang continued encouragingly, Yi Chong, do you like her? Compared to all the women you've ever met before. His voice now had a bewitching quality to it. Yi Chong lifted his head and peered towards Rui Bing. Rui Bin sat in all seriousness, but a flash of panic was evident in her eyes. Yi Chong considered before replying, I like her. It seemed that, of all the women he had ever met, she was the only that made him feel a sense of admiration, and she was definitely the strongest of women he had ever encountered. But, what's that got to do with anything? Yi Chong's logic was not affected at all by Shang. Nothing. But Yi, when can you begin your life as a real man? Shang gave a long sigh. Am I not normal? Yi Chong was obviously dissatisfied with the conclusion. Could it be that you have no sexual desires for women? Shang barely managed to ask. Sexual desires? Yi Chong was at a loss. Should anyone have sexual desires towards women? Shang felt like he was dealt with a death blow. Yi, you're too good at this. Me. I'm still not good enough. Compared to Mew, I'm still too weak. Yi Chong replied. Compared to Mew. Heavens, it's like talking with an animal. No, Yi, it seems that it'll be necessary to teach you a lesson in biological reproduction. Yi, later I'll show you some of the latest holographic passionate battles, that's my ultimate collection. Shang spoke with fiery intensity. Holographic information. Passionate battles. Is it a battle between mechs? Yi Chong asked. A battle between mechs. Shang's photon processor was visualizing 2 humanoid mechs engaged in a passionate battle midair, machine oil spraying everywhere, accessories flying off in all directions, together with a cringe-worthy sound of metal rubbing against metal. Shang felt a chill spread across him and nearly short-circuited. For someone as logic-minded as Yi Chong to discuss emotions, especially that of between members of the opposite sex, it was definitely a depressing challenge for Shang. Rui Bing held a normal expression, but her heart was throbbing violently. Yi Chong, sitting opposite her, had at first lowered his head in thought, then lifted his vision to her for a moment before continuing his thoughts. For the first time ever, Rui Bing had a strange feeling, mixed with hope and fear, afraid of what she might lose. She could only do her best to stay calm, or at least maintain the impression of calmness. Rui Bing was aware of her own traditional mindset, even when she had chosen to inherit her father's dojo years ago despite opposition. All these years, the age-old traditions had already become part of her, and she was not capable of changing this part of herself, nor did she wanted to. This kind of life made her feel peaceful. Rui Bing eyed the man before her with mixed feelings. Will this man, whom she had met not so long ago, be her future husband? If he rejected, what should she do? While she had insisted on traditional practices, it did not mean that she should impose it on others. Her persistence was her own, and Yi Chong's rejection was only natural, then what should she do? Although she already had her mind set, Rui Bing was still at a loss at the present moment. Alright, back to the original question, what does it mean to marry her? What's the end result? Yi Chong asked. Marrying her means having a legal bond of husband and wife between you two. The end result if that you will be with her for the rest of your life. Shang did not think Yi Chong could understand anything beyond that. Be with her. Why should I be with her for the rest of my life? Yi Chong asked another mind-bending question to Shang. Shang was speechless. Shang did not believe that a healthy man like Yi Chong would not be interested in women at all. Suddenly, a brilliant idea came to his mind. Yi, to make you understand this whole affair, we can do an experiment. Shang's tone was odd, but he had finally concluded that Yi Chong could only handle facts. Okay, how? Yi Chong was also keen to try. He was always asking these sort of questions, and Yi Chong had no intention of being entirely ignorant of this topic. Go right in front of her. Don't worry, she'll definitely not harm you. Besides, in her current condition, she's not a match for you. Shang enticed. Okay. Yi Chong walked to Rui Bing and stopped before her, and panic flashed past Rui Bing's pale face. Take her hand. The devil's tail began to show itself. Hand. Yi Chong felt uncertain, and asked, which hand? Crash! A certain devil's fall sent out a shockwave. Shang spoke with a trembling voice, whichever. Shang's fall to the ground shocked Rui Bing, but it had also eased her nervousness against Yi Chong's approach. Yi Chong took Rui Bing's right hand, his body in high alert, ready for any form of attack from her. For Yi Chong, his action would definitely invite retaliation from the other party. No one would let their hand be held in another person's hands. The action was akin to giving up one's life to another person. However, Rui Bing's reaction baffled Yi Chong. She pulled her hand back a little, but not enough to escape from his grasp. Her tightly closed lips were pale from the pressure. Her initial pallor was now replaced with a thorough blush, but she did not lower her head, managing to look right at Yi Chong. Her clear eyes were filled with a rare coquetry and a little stubbornness. She kept her gaze on Yi Chong. What next? Yi Chong asked. Have a good feel of her hand. The devil's tail was growing obvious. Feel her hand. Yi Chong was confused. Could it be that her hand had something special about it? Yi Chong felt the hand carefully, but did not notice anything special. However, to think that such a soft and delicate hand could have such potential for battle. Yi Chong's hands may be long and slender, but his hands were solid and muscular, quite different from the woman's. Could this be what Shang wanted him to notice? Yi Chong spoke. It's soft, with calluses around the edges of the palm, evident signs of some level of training, but her hand is obviously of a different type than mine. Could there be some mystery behind this? Shang stammered. Yi, is this what you feel? Yup, what's the problem? Yi Chong replied. Shang was full of disbelief. Yi, can you really not feel anything else? Like, does it feel comfortable? I suppose it does. Yi Chong gave a little squeeze to the delicate hand, but what does it matter? By then, poor Rui Bing was as red as a tomato, but still she refused to lower her head. Her clear eyes were now growing watery, and her tightly held lips were a sign of her exerting strong self-control. Since young, no man had ever touched her hands, but the man before her had now grasped her hand in his, doing as he wished. While she had already decided to marry this man, she still could not accept that the man was given into such frivolity, as her rational side kept her composed. A strange, unprecedented tingling sensation came from her right hand. She could even feel the strength and warmth from Yi Chong's palms. The feeling was unnerving, and she was at a loss as to what to do next. Shang muttered, looks like this degree of stimulation is too little. For a wild animal like Yi, no, a humanoid mech may be more appropriate. This degree of stimulation is too little. Shang became more spirited and said, Yi, for the next step, put your nose near to the left side of her throat, keep the distance less than 2 centimeters, and feel it closely. Yi Chong did not doubt Shang's request and did as he was told in all seriousness. Suddenly, he moved his face close to Rui Bing's neck, his nose almost touching her skin, no more than 2 centimeters from him. A mysterious, sweet smell came to him. Her warm, snow-white skin had his full attention and, almost reflexively, Yi Chong could not help but stick out his tongue and lick her neck. In an instant, Yi Chong felt like his belly was on fire. He felt a burning surge engulf him. Yi Chong couldn't help but gasp heavily. Faced with this stimulation, Yi Chong felt a buzz in his head. Almost immediately, the powerful flow of emotions that he suppressed a few days ago was like a stoked fire, and Yi Chong felt like his brain might blow up. The overwhelming wild emotions engulfed him in an instant, and Yi Chong could only see red in his eyes, and his last thought before he lost consciousness was this: This is a woman? Rui Bing could not keep her composure when Yi Chong put his face so close to her. As Yi Chong licked, she was thunderstruck. Yi Chong's heavy breath against her sensitive neck only made Rui Bing more anxious. Almost without thinking, Rui Bing, with a long history of martial arts training and self-defense, was driven to action. Rui Bing slid her right hand and grabbed Yi Chang's left hand. Her soft, white hands were now as strong as hardened steel. Her left hand pressed towards Yi Chang's chest as fast as lightning, and her legs moved as she stood up, lifting Yi Chang with her. Women's basic anti-sexual assault skills, third move. Nether region kick. The kick was perfect, strength or angle-wise, and Yi Chang curled into a shrimp-like posture but, oddly, did not produce any pitiful shriek. The move was followed immediately by an over-shoulder throw. Her movements were fluid and natural, and any martial arts practitioner who witnessed Rui Bing's move after move would have been very impressed. In reality, Rui Bing did not know any anti-sexual harassment moves at first. However, the dojo often had some female students who came to learn some basic defense skills, and women's basic anti-sexual assault skills were a necessary part of it. Hence, Rui Bing had deliberately learned a few moves, and they now conveniently served her. Yi Chang was like a sandbag, ruthlessly thrown to a corner and left on the floor, without any reaction. Yi Chang's mind was like a sea of fire, his consciousness struggling to survive within the fiery ocean, as his external senses had been thoroughly eclipsed. The volcanic flow of emotions wreaked havoc in his mind, and Yi Chang's barely surviving consciousness was also affected. He only felt heat, of which was the most intense heat. An unspeakable feeling began to accumulate within Yi Chang. But strangely, his body was not at his command. The suffocating and intense sense of outrage whirled within Yi Chang's mind like a storm, and Yi Chang felt more and more heated, but could find no way to vent off his feelings. When Rui Bing came back to her senses and found Yi Chang on the floor, unmoving, she was shocked to the core, extremely regretting her actions. How could she be so impulsive? What will happen to her if he was injured? The thought of that kick earlier made Rui Bing panic. Rui Bing was about to approach Yi Chang and check for injuries when a shadow flashed before her eyes, and a huge, greenish figure flew past Yi Chang and was almost immediately out of the mech modification workshop. Surprised, Rui Bing rushed to the workshop's entrance, but the huge figure and Yi Chang were already gone without a trace. A disappointed Rui Bing stood before the workshop's entrance as she looked towards the sky in a daze, looking almost infatuated for a moment. Out in the wilderness, surrounded by rocks as tall as a few people, scattered across the area to as far as 20 kilometers away. Yi Chang sat worn out on the ground, his body all covered in dust from crushed rocks, with Miu staying quietly by his side. Shang knew that he had crossed the line this time, and switched with Miu as soon as he arrived here. Yi Chang had finished with his berserking, now surrounded by pieces of rock debris. Within 20 meters from Yi Chang, none of the rocks were larger than a meter in girth, as they were all sacrificed for Yi Chang's venting. Yi Chang felt like he was an unstable stock of fire powder, ready to explode at the slightest provocation. Yi Chang, who had always had high regard for calmness, hated very much the way he had just lost control of his rational mind, even if his physical abilities were enhanced in various ways under that condition. Yi Chang smiled wryly at himself. Miu, I'm in big trouble this time. Miu agreed. That's right, Yi, you're now suppressing your emotions. It looks like women still have the same effect on you. Miu did not miss the opportunity to mock him. Yi Chang forced another smile at that. That damned Shang. Reflexively, his mind produced an image of the smooth whiteness of skin, the oddly sweet odor that came from it, and the indescribable taste when the tip of his tongue came into contact. Miu broke his reverie. Yi, your condition is really not good. There are now two versions of your condition. First is the way your body loses control, but your mind is clear and conscious of the pain. The second version is the way you were overstimulated and lost control like just now. Similarly, you lost bodily control, but in this version, your mind is blurry. The factors that induce the first version is unclear, but from your reaction this time, the second version is clearly triggered by the slightest stimulation. Who could have imagined that Black Cove's silver liquid was so powerful? Of course, that's assuming our assumptions are right. Yi Chang had already recovered his usual calm composure. He frowned a little and said, if it's Black Cove, they must have a way of curing this. But the point is, how can we find out about it? Miu replied, that's right, but based on my calculations, the probability of our successful infiltration into Black Cove is only at 15.6%, which is too low. I would not recommend it. Yi Chang agreed. Yeah, that probability is really too low. Sigh, the main issue is, we're too weak, and Miu, you haven't fully recovered yet. It's no different than knocking on death's door. Besides, we're still not sure if this is the work of Black Cove, that's only an assumption of ours. For someone like Yi Chang who had grown up on a trash planet, he had a more profound sense of appreciation of life than others. Perhaps only those who had often encountered situations of life and death could understand the value of life. Yi Chang continued, in the short term, there's no way to infiltrate Black Cove. Yi Chong knew from experience that Black Cove had tight security, and with the current state of Mew and himself, infiltrating would be a fool's errand. We'll have to wait until we're more powerful to work on Black Cove. However, your weird condition still requires treatment. It seems that we'll have to find an excellent doctor to help you out. Mew spoke with an undertone of uncertainty. If Yi Chong was to seek treatment, he would have to leave Blue Ocean. While the planet was prosperous, it was not known for its medical services. Yi Chong quite enjoyed his simple life in Blue Ocean Academy, but what he would really miss was the so-called first-class modification workshop and Grandpa Qian. However, such was life. The usually calm Yi Chong felt overwhelmed with emotions. Without his bidding, the image of that white training garb flashed past his thoughts. Mew had once again returned to its alternate dimension, and so Yi Chong deployed the harmony of the winter aria and flew towards Blue Ocean Academy. By the time he had reached the academy grounds, night was already looming. Yi Chong had planned to spend his last night here, and also to give the harmony a checkup as preparation for his departure tomorrow. The modification workshop was dark, and Rui Bing seemed to have left. Yi Chong was ready to land when Mew cautioned him, "Yi, be careful, there are enemies inside." 7 mechs. Yi Chong was greatly surprised. 7 mechs, all hidden in various corners of the modification workshop. Once he stepped into the workshop, he would be like a caged bird, unable to leave again. If not for Mew, he would have met his end here. However, Mew was by his side, and Yi Chong unemotionally watched as Mew portrayed holographically the locations of the 7 mechs. From this, one can see the difference between the harmony of the winter aria and Mew. Yi Chong's harmony had not noticed the enemy at all. The workshop's building structure was made of special materials that could block communication signals, and holographic scans of the workshop were impossible. Of course, this was Blue Ocean Planet's most advanced modification workshop, and the design was also to protect the workshop and its secrets from outsiders. Yi Chong had no idea how Mew could have noticed the enemies. "Mew, you're too powerful." Yi Chong could not help but sighed, and looked forward to the day he could pilot a mech as good as Mew. That would be the happiest moment of his life. As for Mew, Yi Chong had no intentions of piloting him. While Mew had mentioned before that he would let Yi Chong pilot him if Yi Chong surpassed him in skills, Yi Chong had no doubt that it would be an almost impossible task. More importantly, Yi Chong had never thought of Mew as a mech. Mew was undeniably powerful, but with the harmony of the winter aria, Yi Chong was not as weak as he was before. Yi Chong could not help but feel a sense of pride. Since the other party was obviously hostile, he had no reason to hold back. Yi Chong did not attack immediately, but instead released the 5 mechanical hummingbirds he had. The hummingbird scanning system was made up of 5 blue birds, and they flew quietly into the darkness. Yi Chong waited patiently for information from the hummingbirds. He must first know whether there were any other enemies in hiding outside the workshop. If there were, a quiet escape would be the best strategy for him. Since there was no chance of him defeating everyone here without Mew's help, he would only be wasting his time in combat. As the 5 hummingbirds were released, the images that were disrupted by interference signals immediately cleared up, and the scanning coverage was increased. It seemed that the 5 hummingbirds were indeed useful. From the hummingbird scanning results, it seemed that there were no enemies hidden nearby. While the hummingbirds' accuracy and sensitivity within the atmosphere were not as impressive as when the birds were in space, the scanning radius was still up to a good 50 kilometers. The enemy must have realized the special design of the modification workshop. They were also wary of being noticed if someone was placed outside. If he left quietly now, it would not be a problem at all. However, Yi Chong was curious to know where the enemies came from, since it would definitely be useful information in the future. If not, he might unknowingly walk into the enemy's trap someday. Besides, Yi Chong believed that even if he could not completely destroy the enemy, he should be able to at least successfully retreat. Yi Chong also had the intention of testing the true capabilities of the harmony of the winter aria, and his progress so far. The currently greenish-gray mech, the result of Yi Chong's efforts, seemed entirely inconspicuous. Even its metallic gleam was obscured, giving the impression of an aged machine. However, the lack of a metallic shine made the harmony of the winter aria even more concealed in the darkness, nearly unnoticeable. Harmony of the winter aria flew silently like a greenish-gray bat towards the modification workshop. Yi Chong did not choose the main entrance, since it would be the main focus of any enemy attack. If he entered that way, he would be welcomed with a full range of firepower attacks, and all that was left of him would be dust. Yi Chong carefully circled to the southern side of the workshop. Based on the holographic image, there was a mech standing against the wall in the corner. Yi Chong's lance, Blue Winter, was 15 meters long, and the wall was about 2.5 meters thick. The wall's structural material was mainly a composite of high-strength components, with some anti-signal transmission material. However, the latter had no effect on the sturdiness of the walls. Yi Chong flew to about 800 meters from the workshop, the distance enough to accelerate the Harmony to its maximum speed. The engines were fully activated. The inconspicuous mech had unsheathed its razor-sharp claws. The 15-meter-long Blue Winter was even taller than the Harmony of the Winter Aria, making the weapon look like an arrow that had just left the bow. The Harmony's wings were folded into its back. Harmony of the Winter Aria's Mach 7 speed of flight was now unleashed in all its glory. As the scenery around flashed past him, Yi Chong felt strangely calmed. The hands wielding the Blue Winter did not even tremble in the slightest. The wall of the workshop was instantly penetrated. The advanced energy feedback mechanism allowed Yi Chong to feel the impact experienced by the lance. A loud boom reverberated, and the workshop's wall crumbled, and its fragments flew off in all directions. Yi Chong felt a small pause in the mech's movement, and knew that his attack had hit right on target. Yi Chong was familiar with the insides of the workshop, and knew that the spot he attacked should have been empty. Hence, he must have hit the mech against the wall. Yi Chong guessed right. Yi Chong's high-speed impact using his lance was terrifyingly powerful. His lance, the Blue Winter, could even penetrate Black Coast mechs, and this time it offered no mercy to his enemy. The unfortunate mech was instantly in pieces. At the sound of a crash, numerous black fragments flew past Yi Chong. Yi Chong was shocked. It was a Black Cove mech. Yi Chong was familiar with this kind of black mech. How did they find him? This was obviously not the time to ask such a question. Yi Chong had no time to think about it as he swirled and swung off a few fragments hanging off the lance. The sudden attack threw the enemies into confusion. Yi Chong's ambush had also achieved his aim. The modification workshop was large, housing a good number of mechs, mech accessories and some modification devices. The massive Harmony of the Winter Aria moved swiftly like a cat through the workshop. Suddenly, the workshop's lights were all switched off and the room was engulfed in darkness. Yi Chong gave a chilling laugh. In the workshop, all forms of signals were blocked, and they had no means of communicating with each other. Hee, this workshop cramped with all kinds of stuff is the perfect battleground for me, thought Yi Chong. It was him who had destroyed the workshop's lighting. With Mu along, Yi Chong now held the definitive upper hand. Moreover, his frequent visits here meant that he knew all the corners of the workshop. From Mu's holographic image, the crash had invited 3 mechs to fly towards him. One of the mechs crept slowly towards him. All forms of signals were disabled here, and they had no way of getting in touch with each other. The pilot within the mech began to feel nervous. For a Black Cove elite like him, it had been a long time since he felt like this. The damned bastard destroyed the lighting system. The pilot cursed to himself. However, his training guided him despite his anxiety, and he carefully approached towards the direction of the sound of impact he heard earlier. Without a holographic scanning system and any lighting, he felt like a blind person, groping his way through the dark, occasionally crashing into something. If not for his skills, he would have tumbled quite a few times. While the mech had laser searchlights, he dared not switch it on. It would be no joke if he activated the searchlight, as he would be the most obvious target, and the first to die in the hands of the enemy. He was despaired, comforted only the fact the Black Cove mechs were highly durable. This made him brave through his worries and move forward. Up till now, with the exception of the MPA, he had never met any weapon that could be a fatal threat to his mech. This was a great source of comfort for him. Suddenly, a noise came from the front. Could it be that his comrades were exchanging blows with the opponent? He decided that it must be so, and immediately rushed towards the source of the sound. He had no time to care for the potential damages to his mech, since Black Cove mechs could not be damaged so easily. He was ready to charge his way through to his destination. I can finally leave this horrible SHT place. He would give anything to move faster, just a little faster. If 2 mechs were to work together, he believed that the enemy would not stand a chance. Bang! His first thought was that he ran into something. Before he could react, the holographic screen before him was crushed, its pieces sprang outwards. A huge, cone-shaped metal appeared before his eyes, and before he could let out a terrified scream, the sharp edge of the cone plunged through his body. Bang! A huge wave of energy passed through him, and he was dismembered into a rain of flesh and blood, flying outwards along with the fragments of his mech. The bits and pieces flew outwards and landed everywhere, followed by a continuous series of splattering sounds. He never had the chance to realize the cause of his death. Yi Chong watched with cold eyes, emotionless. When he saw the mech moving quickly towards him, a plan occurred to him, and he held the lance in the trajectory of the mech. Seeing as the mech was still moving quickly, Yi Chong picked up some mech fragment from the floor and threw it behind him. As expected, upon hearing the fragment landing behind him, the mech moved faster towards him. It ran straight into Blue Winter, which Yi Chong had prepared earlier. Blue Winter, a most powerful weapon due to its Dukun stone component, penetrated another Black Cove mech without hindrance. Yi Chong understood the misconception that Black Cove citizens harbored for their mechs. If not for Mew, he would probably be the same as them. There were still 5 mechs left. Yi Chong quietly counted to himself and silently moved away from his location. Only 1 mech left. Yi Chong watched the holographic image that Mew transmitted to him, with only one last red dot on it. Just now, in less than a half minute, Yi Chong had taken advantage of his enemy's blindness and unfamiliarity with the environment, and managed to ambush and kill 6 of them. Ambushing through the darkness, Yi Chong's Harmony of the Winter aria was like an assassin of the night, deft and cruel. As for the Blue Winter, an archaic-looking lance, Yi Chong now wielded it with ease. The 8 moves created by Mew through numerous calculations were twofold in the current situation. Yi Chong hit his targets every single time. Black Cove's most trusted mech armor were as fragile as wafer biscuits before Yi Chong's Blue Winter. If Yi Chong was compared to the devil from the lowest level of hell, then Blue Winter would be the devil's enormous and sinister-looking scythe, covered in blood. Blue Winter's most dangerous part was its tip, and the blades on its 2 sides were like murder accessories, mostly responsible for tearing apart the opponent's mech. According to Mew and Shang, the proportion of Dukun stone in the tip of Blue Winter was far from ideal, but Yi Chong was still very impressed with the weapon's might. What would the Blue Winter be like if the proportion was ideal? Yi Chong could not help but look forward to such a time. With only the last mech left, Yi Chong approached the enemy with caution. The mech moved with care, its back against the wall. Unless he moved away, an ambush from the back would be impossible. Yi Chong was left with the option of closing in from the left. To keep himself unnoticed, the Harmony of the Winter aria's engines were running at minimum capacity as the mech silently closed in onto its target. Its close. Only 20 meters left. Blue Winter was 15 meters long. With another 10 meters, no, perhaps 8 meters, it would be enough for Blue Winter to tear the enemy apart. Right, it's time. Yi Chong was about to move when something extraordinary happened. Yi Chong saw a blinding flash of light. The bright light saturating his holographic screen screamed into his eyes and blinded him. Yi Chong was shocked. He was not, however, panicking. His right hand, ready with Blue Winter, immediately striked out like lightning. If it were anyone else, their first reaction upon being surprised would be to retreat as quickly as possible. However, Yi Chong understood that the better option would be to defend himself by attacking. Ding, a metallic ring was heard, and Yi Chong's Blue Winter was obviously blocked by something. However, this gave enough time for Yi Chong to step back. Once the lance attacked, Yi Chong's hands were already moving deftly across the controls. Harmony of the Winter aria moved as though according to plan, riding the backward momentum of the attack and retreating swiftly. The opponent was obviously surprised by Yi Chong's quick reaction. Yi Chong's vision had now returned to normal. The opponent must have used something like a flash grenade, and now the entire workshop was lit up. Flash grenades were, in truth, very rarely used nowadays. It seemed to have become a historical relic, both in terms of its function and usage. With the various types of advanced scanning mechanisms available, mechs could reconstruct images through feedback from the scanning systems, images that were far more detailed than what the human eye could capture. Besides, the effective scanning perimeter of a scanning system in space was far larger than the limits of the human eye. The most important function of the flash grenade was to provide light for the human eye, but with the advent of improving scanning mechanisms, it was in the awkward position of slowly being replaced. Yi Chong did not expect his opponent to have something so outdated. Through the lighting, Yi Chong could not see his opponent's mech clearly. The mech was thoroughly black, true to Black Cove style. What surprised Yi Chong was the ancient design of the mech, with obvious Samuel-style influence, a popular style from 100 years back. There was nothing spectacular about this model of mechs. Even Johansson's mech looked more imposing and menacing. However, Yi Chong dared not underestimate it. Samuel-style mechs were also known as battle mechs. Since long-range weapons and locking systems were not as impressive as the ones today, these mechs with their ancient dueling attack style were widely popular. However, with the improvements in long-range weapons and a general paradigm shift in mechs, Samuel-style mechs eventually declined in numbers. However, Yi Chong still approved of Samuel-style mechs. He had always believed that these mechs were an undying classic, embodying the most fundamental quintessence of battle. The mechs were designed for close-range battles, and while they may look plain, a closer inspection of its details and design that would explain its status as a classic. Samuel-style mechs were undeniably the best partner for a pilot skilled in martial arts. However, that was the reason for its declining popularity, since martial arts was also a dying skill. Black Cove residents were familiar with martial arts, and even Yi Chong learned a few moves from them. Yi Chong waited, fully alert. His opponent, however, had no intention of attacking. Number 58, we meet again. A man's voice came from the mech, reverberating throughout the workshop. Yi Chong was taken aback. Instructor Hack. That's right. It's me. Number 58, you were under me in Team F, and so the higher-ups had asked me to bring you back. Instructor Hack lowered his voice and said, Number 58, come with me. The higher-ups do not intend to take action against your disobedience. If you run, it'll only be the death of you. Yi Chong calmly replied, Is that so? Hack spoke seriously, You may have killed these few here, but they were only soldiers of the lowest rank from Black Cove. You may be stronger than all of them, but against the soldiers in higher ranks, you're still very weak. On the deaths of his 6 comrades, Hack showed no signs of pity. Yi Chong's voice grew even colder. Is that so? Come back with me. You're Team F's most talented member in history, and your future is limitless. It's only a matter of time before you make a contract with us. Besides, the higher-ups are interested in you, even letting go of your huge mistake. Number 58, this is unprecedented. Yi Chong did not even condescend to reply. Will he return to Black Cove to be the sword in another person's hands? Yi Chong hated feeling restricted. He believed that, even if he was a wild animal, he would still be one that ran freely in the wilderness, howling without restraint under the night sky. This, as opposed to being leashed on the neck, fitted with steel claws, and tamed as someone's pet. Besides, he's human. Hack continued leisurely, besides, number 58, that little something of yours should be reacting about now. Yi Chong's expression twisted. So it's really you. Hack was unfazed. Number 58, the silver liquid was supposedly used to prepare Black Cove soldiers for combat. While it may bring you great pain, as long as you learn the true skills of Black Cove, you'll understand how helpful it can be. It can turn you into the most powerful soldier. However, as you are now, this pain will continue on forever. There will be episodes of it, and you will wish for death instead. Number 58, you must clearly remember this painful experience. It will become more and more painful, until one day you will kill yourself just to stop the pain. There had never been anyone who could live through it. Yi Chong's eyes slowly narrowed into a slit, thin as the edge of a blade, as he stared dead straight at the mech before him. If the two of them were to fight hand-to-hand, Yi Chong would definitely escape. He had personal experience with Hack's weird and powerful martial arts skills, and Yi Chong was certainly no match for it. However, if it was a battle between mechs, Yi Chong was more confident with himself. In terms of the speed of their hands, Hack was definitely slower than him. Besides, a battle between mechs did not involve as much intricacies as a battle between men, and Yi Chong was mostly cautious about Hack's weird martial arts. However, Yi Chong believed Hack could not apply his skills effectively through a mech, thus increasing Yi Chong's chances of winning. Moreover, Yi Chong had full confidence in the harmony of the winter aria. Still, there were a few things that baffled Yi Chong. How did Black Cove find him? How did Hack notice him earlier? Yi Chong did not believe that they were the results of coincidences. Why did he not use the flash grenades earlier, but only after the deaths of 6 of his comrades? These questions occupied Yi Chong's mind. Hack smiled, as though he could read his thoughts. You must be trying to guess how I knew about your ambush. Yi Chong was speechless, only unemotionally observing the mech on his holographic screen. Since I'm your instructor, let me teach you a little something. The 6 senses of an ancient martial arts practitioner are very sensitive. Even though the mech scanning is useless, I could still hear things. Of course, that can't happen through the mech sound conduction device. Earlier, I had opened the door of the pilot's cabin. While your harmony of the winter aria's engine was quiet, it was still easy for me to pinpoint your location. Do you not want to learn skills like these? Are you not interested in becoming more powerful? Number 58, come back with me to Black Cove. Over there, you can become stronger. Hack's final sentences were full of enticement. Yi Chong now realized his methods, and the sheer brilliance of it. However, with regards to his last few sentences, Yi Chong had no reaction to them at all. Instead, he quietly pressed a few controls. How does he know the name of my mech? Yi Chong felt unsure. Hack suddenly asked a question out of the blue. Number 58, based on our information, you're called Yi Chong here, your family name. Before Hack could finish, a silver line drew towards his chest, an attack not forewarned. Hack's voice was cut off, but Yi Chong's blow was also blocked. Hack was extremely wary against Yi Chong. In Black Cove, the young man was strong and improved quickly, both a shock to Hack. Yi Chong's speed with his hands were also the fastest he had ever seen. While that alone was not everything, but it was undeniably a very important skill to unleash the maximum battling potential of a mech. Besides, Yi Chang's strong physique was also better than Hack's, and that meant Yi Chang could perform more complicated and demanding movements, allowing one to gain a preemptive strike in battle. In Black Cove, physical training was also one of their core trainings. Now, Hack could only hope that Yi Chang was not too skilled in mech piloting. Yi Chang's surprise attack was easily countered by an anticipatory Hack. Hack was also vexed by the current situation. He was ordered by the higher-ups to bring number 58 back without harming him, but Yi Chang's strength made it impossible for him to guarantee that. If the two of them were about equally matched, it would be more difficult to capture the other alive than to kill him. As it was, the higher-ups had insisted of him bringing number 58 in one piece. Hack speculated that number 58 could be the son of Black Cove's leader. If not for number 58's cold nature, Hack would have done what Ji Shengyan did, threatening him with the old man Qian. However, Hack expected that with number 58's personality, he would not have placed any importance in the old man's life. It would have been a wasted effort, alerting his opponent and dashing any hopes for an ambush. However, he did not expect Yi Chang to notice their ambush and return their favor instead. A real talent, this bastard. Yi Chang did not hesitate. He expected the lance to be blocked, and so the harmony of the winter aria swirled, and another cold gleam reached for Hack. Hack dared not be negligent, his right fist blocked and swung, and the cold gleam rapidly faded. Besides its unique design, Hack's mech was actually quite average. Only its two fists were fitted with barbs, occasionally flashing menacingly during the fight, and no other weapons were visible on the mech. However, the elbows were clearly layered for extra thickness, and the short and thick barbs did not shine dangerously as it would have, entirely inconspicuous. Yi Chang did not falter. Hack's admirable battling techniques were not new to Yi Chang, since he had seen them before on Black Cove. If Hack performed badly in mech piloting, Yi Chang would be surprised. The green and black mechs confronted each other. The first to strike would be advantageous. Yi Chang sidestepped and quickly pointed blue winter lightning towards Hack's mech. The cold gleam from the tip of the lance drew a chilling silver arc in the air. His basic training was already part of him, and the few side steps he took was almost flawless. Hack saw the harmony of the winter aria's seemingly plain footwork and could not help but be impressed. As good as he was in battling, he could see the quality of the steps. If it was his own body, he could do it even better, but through a mech, he could only realize his own incompetence. However, Yi Chang's seemingly frightening attack with the lance did not faze him. While it seemed threatening, Hack had a few moves up his sleeves to counter it. As he saw it, Yi Chang's lance techniques and his footwork were at far too different levels. Hack's mech was called Kai, and it had been with him for 2 decades. After so many years, it was almost a part of Hack himself. Kai stepped back quickly, barely avoiding Yi Chang's strike with his lance. The cold gleam from the tip of blue winter swiped past the mech, millimeters from its surface. Harmony of the winter aria turned, and blue winter made an impossible twist in the air before charging towards Kai's abdomen. Kai's left arm lowered, connecting obliquely with the side of blue winter as blue winter was repelled back upwards. Yi Chang was surprised, not expecting Hack's inconspicuous mech to have such strong arms. Yi Chang went with the flow of movement and blocked a fist coming towards him with the handle of the lance. The punch was strong, such that if Yi Chang had not commanded the harmony to hold a tighter grip on blue winter, it would probably go flying. Before Yi Chang could react any further, he suddenly felt the world spin, and Hack's mech was getting further and further away from him. It was only then that he realized that Kai had sneaked in a kick on him. A rising fighting spirit was evident in Yi Chang's eyes. What great strength! Yi Chang guessed that Hack's mech must have been strengthened extensively to fit his combat style. The photon processor sounded a piercing alarm, indicating that the kick had caused significant damage to harmony of the winter aria. Yi Chang was astonished to find that he did not even realize when the kick was made. What commendable techniques! Yi Chang's hands moved swiftly across the controls like smoke, issuing a series of commands. Harmony of the winter aria's engines roared to life, and the mech somersaulted gracefully midair in an arc, steadying itself before landing. Hack was not surprised that Yi Chang did not fall to the ground, it was only natural given the speed of Yi Chang's hands. Hack maneuvered Kai deftly, and before Yi Chang could barely steady himself, a fist flew towards Yi Chang, fast as a comet. His lance sprang to life as blue winter moved like a venomous serpent, hissing with its forked tongue. Hack was mildly surprised that Yi Chang could use the lance so well, and greatly admired his ability to adapt to various situations. One should know that using something like the archaic lance required special techniques. In the hands of someone ignorant, it would be no more useful than a metal pole. However, the weapon was already long gone in history, and even in Black Cove, where expert fighters were abound, few used a lance as their mech's weapon. Without much time to spare, Kai crossed its arms to shield its vulnerabilities. Blocking it, are you? Yichang smiled coldly to himself. Ding! Blue Winter's tip landed squarely on its opponent for the very first time. His expectation of the lance penetrating the mech entirely was unmet, as Blue Winter only penetrated halfway through one of Kai's arms. Yichang suddenly realized that Hack's mech must have gone through a special strengthening process. Yichang immediately reacted by retreating with his lance, putting a distance between him and Kai. Hack was completely astonished. He could barely believe that there was still a weapon that could damage his mech like that. His astonishment quickly turned into anger, as Kai had never been damaged in the 20 years of their partnership. He did not expect to receive such humiliation from the little bastard today. Hack's face darkened instantly. Yichang watched Hack's mech coldly, without any emotions. He knew that he had just lost the perfect opportunity just now, and Hack would not let his mech and Blue Winter come into direct contact again. With his skills, that was entirely possible. By now, Yichang felt icy calm. Harmony of the Winter aria suddenly accelerated to its maximum speed, and Yichang charged towards Hack with Blue Winter in hand. Based on his experience, if his attack was on target this time, he will be able to fully penetrate Kai. The high-speed impact would increase its usual destructive effect by a few magnitudes. Hack may be furious, but he did not lose his rational mind. He knew that he could not afford to receive the incoming attack. He gauged the direction of the lance and twisted his body, barely escaping the tip of the weapon. As Yichang was about to rush past Hack, Yichang gave a cold laugh, and his hands flew across the controls. The double-folded wings on the back of Harmony of the Winter aria suddenly expanded. The sharp edges of the wings cut like blades, and after some strengthening treatment, the wings were as sharp as alloy daggers. Harmony of the Winter arias could go up to Mach 7. The shrieking sound of air rushing past the edges was terrifying. Hack immediately realized the danger it posed. There was a loud sound of impact. Kai took a few steps backwards, a long gash on its chest, cracks forming around it like spider webs. Yichang was also doing no better, the powerful impact breaking the wing upon contact. Even though Yichang expected it, he was still tossed to a far corner, and it took him great effort to stabilize himself. The photon processor's alarm blared in full party mode. Hack was now feeling terribly unpleasant. He was obviously stronger than Yichang, but had instead took damage from his opponent. The attacks were also vicious and cunning, which annoyed Hack very much, as though he had just swallowed a fly. Besides, this was someone whom he was teacher to. His beloved mech of 20 years was not seriously damaged, but how could he not be furious about it? Hack's expression grew even darker. His eyes looked as though they could spit fire. Yichang could only smile wryly. He had no other way of fighting, since they were too equally matched. He could only sacrifice a bit of himself to cause greater damage on his opponent. He did not expect Hack to apply his combat skills in mech piloting. Yichang also finally understood that Hack's application of his combat techniques in mech piloting was still meager compared to others, but when using it against him, it was more than enough. Yichang could not help but began to consider the option of escaping. If he escaped now, what were his odds of success? From the performance of Hack's mech, its engines were definitely on par with the Harmony of the Winter arias. If he escaped now, the mech would definitely follow him closely like an annoying fly. Besides, who was to say that they had no other comrades further out? If they had comrades, then the one to falter first would be himself. Him being surrounded and annihilated would be a certainty. Yichang considered the matter, as his eyes unknowingly began to fixate on Kai's engines. There were 3 engines located within Samuel in total. One of them was placed beneath the abdomen along with the others at the outer thighs being the supportive engines. This is one distinct design that made the Samuel-style mechs identifiable. Yichang was bothered, however. While the Blue Winter turned out to be quite a remarkable ranged weapon and the marksmanship of lances taught by the Great Mu was impeccable on both paper and performance, Yichang felt uneasy conducting his fight in this way. It did not feel as comfortable as brandishing cutters like the magnetic blade or the flaming sword. He was fond of the close combats as if he was born for them. Despite all that, Blue Winter the lance remained glued in his hands. It was a good weapon anyway, that Yichang would not let go this quickly. The uneasiness holding a foreign weapon had disintegrated into a mere preference of weaponry the moment he witnessed the capability of Blue Winter in that fight with 6 men before. Its advances were of a perfect score. Even if it were to impale Hack's mech, it would an effortless attempt to inflict actual damage. Other than the Blue Winter, there were a few other weapons in Harmony, but Yichang had yet to test their capabilities. He clenched his teeth as he launched the mech to propel. Harmony of the Winter aria skipped its way like a bird with a broken wing, clumsily and tactlessly. Kai stomped onto the ground as it bent its body like a drastically pressed spring under Hack's command. The energy accumulated over time was unleashed as Kai blasted off like an unstoppable bullet right towards Yi Chong. Kai zoomed past Yi Chong. That was very fast. Yi Chong exclaimed that there was hardly time for him to react. Hack picked such a precise timing to strike back right when Yi Chong was withdrawing the lance. As long as Kai got close enough to this nuisance before him, he would be able to taste victory fairly soon. Wham! Yi Chong felt as if he would spit splats of blood in no time at this rate. Hack's timing manipulation was flawless, and that was discomforting to Yi Chong. One of the pair of wings on Harmony was truly broken and it had negatively affected the overall balance in travels. Not only that, the aerodynamic of the mech had been disrupted, making it difficult to control. That was why Yi Chong hated unnecessary spreading wings on a mech. Droplets of sweat rolled over his forehead one after another. He had achieved the maximum speed of his hands on the control panel. Yi Chong's Harmony grabbed the lance in the right and backed off speedily at an attempt to keep a distance from the terrorizing enemy. Yi Chong was too occupied to pull off a fight. A large amount of input was allocated on the balancing of the mech by making tiny adjustments in its positioning using the supportive engines. Even though Yi Chong tried to maintain a distance between them, Hack had already been absolutely enraged by that moment. Till the final blow he made, his mind was engrossed by the rages after what Yi Chong had done on his mech, while the clear order of bringing Yi Chong in one piece by Black Cove Authority echoed. Providing Yi Chong was still breathing after the fight, with the help of current medical technology, it would not be challenging to make Yi Chong return in whole piece, no matter how injured he was. Hack trashed his concern away as he made up his mind to give this kiddo a proper lesson. Of life, of course. This was the moment when Instructor Hack demonstrated his unrivaled skills. Kai moved energetically like an actual living thing in spite of the major injury under his control. Yi Chong was utterly cornered. Instructor Hack snickered as his eyes glowed coldly at the ancient lance which started to wield slower. If it was not this spear which made him to act cautiously, the kiddo would have been lying on the ground way back. The G family was potent enough to produce such a high-leveled craft even at this decade. Hack was stupefied at first glance. That mech would be some juicy details to be included in his report when he went back. With Yi Chong, needless to say. Although Kai was made out of the classic Samuel's design in the past, it had undergone several rounds of heavy modification accomplished by the ace technicians at Black Cove. Practically speaking, other than the appearance and placement of the main components being similar to the old-fashioned Samuel style, it was literally a brand new mech inside the body. These upgrades were made compatible with Hack's powerful unarmed combat skills. Harmony was immediately in grave danger as Kai inched forward. With such a fearsome velocity, Yi Chong's new toy had somehow become a burden to his fight. The Blue Winter, a compelling lance it might be, was still a slow weapon in comparison to such a mighty opponent. The instructor sneered slightly as he knew what Yi Chong would do. Most of the kiddo's counterattacks were from his lecture back at the Black Cove and those were nothing against his techniques. Hiya. A left crush from Kai's left shoulder, the Harmony's balance went crumpled as its body swung consecutively. Yi Chong's hands hurriedly stormed upon the control panel again as he inputted the command, hoping to regain balance in time. Seeing Yi Chong acting in such a panic, the instructor was joyful. Hack watched his opponent carefully. There. Kai's left arm was raised a little, putting itself into a stance. Shush. Bang. The Blue Winter came piercing underneath of Kai's left arm, tightly like a sword back into its sheath. As if he was prepared for the incoming attack the whole time, Hack predicted the attack and obviously he did not give the kiddo a chance to land a counterattack. Clink. Kai's left arm gripped the lance tightly and the right fist struck upon the Harmony right after. The metallic fist glossed in the dark with the spikes spreading out. The punch was unavoidable even with Yi Chong's hacking speed of his hand movements. It would be impossible to dodge the punch fully, considering how the major parts of Harmony were within its range of attack. Even if he turned his engines to the maximum, it would be too late for him to dodge. It was probably the end of Yi Chong's adventure. He lost. As if. Out of a sudden, a glaring white light flashed before him. Without forewarning, Hack's eyes squinted due to the scorching light. A rumble resounded right after the punch landed as the mech shook a little by the recoil. The processor of his mech then started wailing its alarm menacingly. Boom. A loud explosion followed at the end of rumble. When Hack's sight had recovered from the glaring light after a moment, he could only see a huge dent on the wall before him. The target was nowhere to be seen. The alarm was still ringing in the cabin madly. Hack had no idea what had just happened. He tried moving his mech but he failed. For some reasons, Kai could not move. He looked at the interface as the processor prompted, system failure, main engine severely damaged, inspecting, mobility, negative. Mobility, negative. The bloody red wording peered into his eyes. In the meantime, Yi Chong had escaped. Yes, like a coward, he ran away gracelessly. Yi Chong let off a bitter laugh as he stared upon the torn harmony of the winter aria. After all those efforts he put in renovating this beauty, the former elegance was utterly wiped. It looked like trash that could go straight to the recycling center. The last blow was delivered successfully. The armor of harmony took the spikes of Kai's fist like how Kai chewed on the blue winter's impale. It landed a critical hit. There was no plot twist to save Yi Chong. If it was not under an order to bring Yi Chong back alive, the fist would have hit right into the cabin and even a titan like Yi Chong would die in a whimper. Yi Chong's mood was brightened knowing how he was still alive. And thinking back how he was still able to make a comeback so gorgeously, the usual indifferent, he could not help but to smile slightly. After Yi Chong had planned to escape, he rushed towards Kai's engines. No matter how much the Samuel mechs were overhauled, the placement of the engines would never be changed. Yi Chong, the mod expert, pinpointed such flaw at first look. Back when Harmony was still under the modification process, Yi Chong had sneaked the laser sword within its right hand. The laser sword would not reveal its blade when unactivated, so anyone would hardly notice the remaining handle inside the palm. It was an exceptional stealth and quite a dirty trick too. Yi Chong did not use this killer move right away simply because he could not foresee whether a laser-based cutter could deal with such fatal damage to a mech from Black Cove. He gambled once and of course he won. Apparently, laser swords worked on Black Cover's mechs like wonders. He was not sure how much damage he had inflicted exactly, but seemingly Hack did not come after him straight away. That would be more than enough to justify the significant damage he had done. Well, he speculated so. Back at the climax of their battle, Yi Chong decided to drop the lance and activated the laser sword. Harmony lifted the sword and made an upper slash, a seamless chain of action, so fast it even shocked an experienced killer like Hack, all thanks to Yi Chong's amazing speed. That glaring light that blinded Hack was actually the beam of Yi Chong's laser sword upon its activation. Nonetheless, the Harmony had been torn into chunks, while the Blue Winter had gone into the enemy's hands. It was another horror story for Yi Chong to imagine if he could escape Black Cove's hunting. Hack was not the first one who came after him, and certainly he would not be the last. The Black Cove seemed to be very keen in taking Yi Chong down. Hence, anyone could guess the fight had not ended yet. Sigh. Yi, that was rather incredible. Mew's voice rang suddenly. Incredible. I almost got myself killed, replied Yi Chong, and he laughed bitterly. It is incredible. Mew explained, the probability of your victory would be a measly 8%, whereas the probability of a successful escape would be 33%. In the end, you went after that 33% chance instead. Yi Chong's lips twitched as he spoke. Mew, if you did try to be helpful just now, taking down that guy would have been a piece of cake. For real. I was almost pounded into a pancake, and yet Mew, you actually sat back and did nothing. You are right, replied Mew. However, the catch is, I would provide my assistance only when the probability of your survival goes below 15%. And why is that so? Yi Chong snorted. Based on the reading I had obtained from previous researches, under such circumstance humans would most likely unleash their potential. Moreover, a pilot would be required to take on countless occasions of such kind to become the true pilot. Since you happen to be the owner of both Shang and I, it is essential to make you the strongest pilot. Though Mew's reasoning went flat and calm as if describing something trivial, there was a hint of dignity in his speech which made Yi Chong lowered his eyes in disgrace. Anyone would have assumed that Mew was being harsh and unsympathetic, but this was reasonable to Yi Chong. Mew shared some points and he deeply understood every bit of it. It was his own life, of course he would be the one to fight for it. Back at Trash Planet 12, Yi Chong spent his life growing on the belief that one would always be the one to manipulate one's own fate. The relationship between Mew and Yi Chong might be of a brotherly love and a mutual trust, yet Yi Chong never expected Mew's protection as a form of duty or responsibility. If Mew helped out, without a doubt Yi Chong would express gratitude. If Mew decided not to, however, Yi Chong would not whine about Mew's irresponsibility. It was not his responsibility to protect, nevertheless, it was his responsibility to train. Yi Chong knew Mew well enough that he knew whatever Mew did was for his own good. Only one would become a true warrior after countless dead or alive battles. Was there nothing Yi Chong could rely on? No, there wasn't. To Yi Chong, he knew he could best rely on his own strength. Also, I was recording the opponent's data during the battle. His battle style was rather intriguing. The final result would be released after some data analysis, Mew carried on his speech. Right, Yi Chong nodded in strong approval from his experience. Not only it is intriguing, but also strong. Very strong. But hey, Mew, don't you think our first priority for now is to plan a runaway from the Blue Ocean? Correct, Mew agreed. We would need a spaceship. Like and subscribe.